Hi, like everyone else, I was exploring ChatGPT last week. As you know, ChatGPT is the advanced language model which is created by the OpenAI. It is designed to generate human-like text and converse with us in the natural languages like the way I am talking to you right now. You can learn more about OpenAI and the ChatGPT on the OpenAI website. My name is Neependra and I have trained thousands of engineers in the cloud native stack via our online, offline and self-paced trainings. And that is why I thought of experimenting with ChatGPT to see how it can help learners to learn Kubernetes and then see how good it is. Now, to follow along with me, you need to make sure that you have an account on the OpenAI website and then you can open the ChatGPT interface like the way I have on the screen. For this demo, I am going to use the ChatGPT 3.5, but you can also upgrade to ChatGPT 4, which has advanced features. Currently, there is a wait list to get access to ChatGPT 4. You can show your interest and then they will get back to you. So now let us start by asking a very simple question, that what is the difference between Docker and Kubernetes? So it is first telling us what is Docker and Kubernetes and then giving us differences what it can find between the Docker and Kubernetes. Like it is telling that Docker is more focused on containerization, providing tools for building, packaging and distributing containers, while Kubernetes is focused on the orchestration, automating the deployment and management of the containerized application at scale, which is pretty good. Now, after getting the basic information about Kubernetes, I may want to kind of play around with. So as a learner, I can ask maybe the next question, how I can set up the Kubernetes cluster locally. So let me ask that question now. It is now telling us how we can set up the Kubernetes cluster locally with the help of Minikube, and it is giving us all the steps to do that. Then it is also telling us how we can use kind, which is Kubernetes in Docker, to set up the local cluster. So we have got few options, and there are few other options which it did not list, like setting up with the help of Docker desktop. So maybe we can ask, is there any other way? To set up the Kubernetes cluster locally. And as you can see, it is now listing us that we can also use Docker desktop, K3D, micro Kubernetes and other different ways to set up the local clusters. So as we converse more with the ChatGPT, it is going to give us better answers. And of course, it all depends on how much feedback you are giving back to the ChatGPT. So make sure that when you ask question to ChatGPT, you are giving more context and feedback, and that way you are going to get better output or better answers with the ChatGPT. Let's go forward and ask what is a Kubernetes pod. And as we can see, it is now listing down all the key points with respect to the Kubernetes pod. Like it is the smallest deployment unit. Within the pods, the containers share the same network namespace and they communicate via the local host. And we have other points as well here. Then it has given us a very basic YML file as well to deploy the pod in the Kubernetes cluster, which we may have created in the last step. If you look at the YML file, it has given us the option to set up the pod with 2 containers, which is very good. Now, I have understood what is Kubernetes pod. Now, as a learner, I may want to verify my knowledge, or if I knew about Kubernetes pods earlier, I may want to come to ChatGPT and say that ask me a few questions and then verify my knowledge as well. So we can ask ChatGPT few questions for the Kubernetes pods, like the way I'm putting up here. So it is now listing down 3 questions with respect to the Kubernetes pods. Now these questions are more subjective. So what I can do is I can say give us the multiple choice questions. So as you can see here, it is now giving us 3 questions, and as a learner we can provide answers to these questions and then verify our knowledge. So for example, for the question 1, what is a Kubernetes pod? We can say that it is a single instance of a running process. So we can say answer B. Then for the question number 2, how do containers within the pod communicate? So here we know that they communicate via the local host, but let's give a wrong answer here. Let's say answer D. And then for the question number 3, what is the primary purpose of deploying multiple containers within the same pod? So here let us give us answer C here. Are our answers, or are my answers to above questions? So now let's see whether our answers are correct or not. Now we have got our answers, but I'm a bit surprised the answers ChatGPT has given. So for example, for the question number 2, we know that we have given the wrong answer, which is the option D, by exposing the public endpoints. But if you look at the answers what came from ChatGPT, it is saying that our answer D is correct. But at the same time, it is also listing the right text against the option D. So if you look at in the question number 2, the option D is this, but as I'm getting the answers, it is saying the option number D is through a shared network namespace and localhost, which is correct. But at the same time, it has not kind of checked our knowledge or checked our answer rightly. So here we have to be a bit careful when we generate the question and answers with the ChatGPT. It might be a limitation for the time being, and it would be better in future. So with that, let's move on. Now let's say I am preparing for the CKA exam. So now I'm learning Kubernetes. I think I'm all good. Now I want to give an exam of Kubernetes CKA or CKAD. So let's see if ChatGPT can generate some scenarios for us, which we can use to practice. So now let me ask ChatGPT to list down few scenarios which I can practice for my CKA exam. So it is now listing down the scenarios which I can practice. So for example, for the scenario 1, it is saying that create a pod named nginx-pod with an nginx container, ensure the pod is running, and inspect its details. So maybe we can kind of ask that, can you solve the question number 1 for me? So let me say, please share the steps to solve the scenario 1. So let's see. So it is now giving us a YAML file. Then it is telling us how we can apply the YAML file, how we can check the output, how we can inspect it. So you can see it has given us all the steps which we can follow to practice all of these different scenarios for the CKA exam. So make sure that you really practice. You can't just type that please give me the answers for the scenario 1 in the exam. So practice is still up to you. So make sure that you practice even after getting the help with the ChatGPT. So in the exam, it cannot replace you. Now let us go ahead and ask a bit advanced question. Like for example, we have deployed our applications on Kubernetes and now we want to expose them publicly. So what are our options? So I'm going to ask that question here. It is now giving us answers. And as you can see, it is telling us we can expose our applications by the service type of node port, load balancer, and external IP. Then it is also telling us we can use the ingress to expose our applications as well. And now additionally, it has also considered a scenario where we may be running Kubernetes on premise, and then in that case we can use service type of load balancer with the help of Metal LB. So here we have got different options to expose our application publicly, which is pretty good. Now I can maybe converse further and say that give me the YAML files for each one of the different examples, or maybe we can just say that can you tell me the YAML file to deploy the applications with the help of service type of load balancer. So we can say, can you give us the YAML config for the load balancer service type. So it is now going to list down the YAML file for deploying our applications with the service type of load balancer. It is also telling us what each of the field of the given YAML file means, so which is going to help us learn better. Let us now experiment by asking more advanced questions. So for example, can I have multiple Ingress controllers on the same cluster? So it is telling us that it is definitely possible to have multiple Ingress controllers on the same cluster, and it has also mentioned why we should be considering that. Like for example, namespace isolation. Now we can ask further advanced questions saying that when we are deploying our ingress, how we can select a given ingress controller. So maybe we can ask how to select a given ingress controller while deploying the ingress object. So now it is telling us that we can use the ingress class to choose the given ingress controller as we deploy our ingress object, which is really good. So as you can see here, to ask such advanced questions, we need to have the domain knowledge. So with the domain knowledge and the ChatGPT help, we can really do our task in a much better way. So make sure that you understand the basics of a given technology and then get the right domain knowledge and the real world scenarios. What are they? And then only you can kind of get most out of the ChatGPT. Now let's look at another way of using ChatGPT. Like for example, we can ask ChatGPT to explain a given topic with respect to a given audience. Like here I'm asking a question to ChatGPT to explain Kubernetes to a 10th grader. So now as we can see here, ChatGPT is taking the example of Lego blocks to explain Kubernetes to a 10th grader. So as you can see here, it is kind of behaving in two extremes. One is as a very beginner and then one is as an advanced user. So as we give more context, more feedback to ChatGPT, we are going to get most out of it. So I hope this video has given you a basic overview how we can use ChatGPT to learn Kubernetes or any other tech. I'll be exploring ChatGPT more to learn about other cloud native tech as well. So make sure that you follow us and subscribe to this channel. In the meanwhile, do let us know the questions you have asked ChatGPT to learn about Kubernetes in the comments of this video. Thanks for staying and watching this video. I am very excited to see what all possibilities AI is going to open up for all the learners and the teachers across the globe in different domains. Let's explore that in the future videos.